National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Good evening. It has been an extraordinary day of protests and politics in the U.S. Capitol, where President Donald Trump spent his first day on the job reaching out to the CIA, attacking the media, and arguing about the size of his inauguration crowd. But there was no disputing the massive marchers outside the White House today. More than 500,000 people attended the Women's March in Washington, a sea of pink hats and angry banners, sending a strong message to the new administration. It was a movement that spread to most major cities around the globe and across Canada, with more than 30 rallies held in this country. But the biggest by far was in Washington, where the crowd was bolstered by a large contingent of Canadians. We'll have more on Trump's first day in office coming up, but we begin with CTV's Richard Madden on today's unprecedented protests.
On the first full day of the Trump presidency, a massive show of defiance.
I do hope that this energizes the American people to call their representatives and stay angry, stay loud, stay engaged.
We do have power, a lot of power and a voice, and we're going to be out here making a change.
I'm gonna let it shine.
The Women's March promoting equality and diversity became a rallying cry against the new administration.
We think it's going to hurt women's rights, lesbian and gay rights, Muslims, immigrants, Mexican. He's offended everybody.
Many wore pink pussycat hats to mock the new president and use his derogatory comments against him.
Nasty woman!
Organizers expected more than 250,000 people here, but it looks like that number is far higher.
In fact, the crowd more than doubled. Too large to continue a planned march to the White House, but they went anyway. There were similar scenes paralyzing most major cities across the country. In Washington, hundreds of Canadians joined the crowd.
We saw the numbers climbing and climbing, and we had to constantly, almost every day, add another bus from Toronto.
This Ontario couple who drove down yesterday claim a U.S. border agent threatened to block their entry and asked for their political views and if they were Trump supporters.
And that it became politicized just 3 hours before the shift and change, I think, is a harbinger of things to come.
Turnout for the Women's March eclipsed yesterday's inauguration. But this group of Trump supporters watching it all dismiss it as sour grapes from Clinton supporters.
You know, this is all in their own little worlds, you know, and they were taught hate in this election. I'm sorry to say, their leadership let them down.
Organizers hope the star power of celebrities and activists will build a new movement to counter Donald Trump.
This is an outpouring of energy and true democracy like I have never seen in my very long life.
Trump takes power. I don't think so. Here's the power. Now, unlike yesterday's protests, today's were peaceful. Many say they're energized, but the question is if they can keep up the momentum. Sandy.
All right, Richard, thank you. Well, the woman who won the popular vote but lost the election to Donald Trump did not go to today's protest, but Hillary Clinton did send her support, tweeting, "Thanks for standing, speaking, and marching for our values. Important as ever. I truly believe we're always stronger together." It's a sentiment that was heard around the world today. In Paris, thousands of protesters gathered in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. Most let their signs do the talking.
This is what democracy looks like.
A more boisterous crowd in Athens, where American and Canadian expats joined the protest outside the U.S. Embassy. Many say Trump represents a step back.
As we feel that we've made a lot of gains and a lot of strides towards, social justice and equality, and we're afraid. We're afraid that we're going to lose those now.
And tens of thousands of protesters filled London's Trafalgar Square.
I think it's really important that the women in the U.S. know that we're behind them.
We are here to march against the rising xenophobia in this country too.
There were similar protests in cities across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Outside of the U.S., some of the biggest protests were here in Canada. And while the focus was on denouncing Donald Trump, many say they were sending a message to politicians on both sides of the border. CTV's Manitoba Bureau Chief Jill Makashon.
As 3,000 people marched through downtown Winnipeg, each message was different. Women's rights, gay rights, refugee rights. These protesters may have different reasons for being here today, but they are united in what they are fighting for.
It's for equality, for the same rights for everybody.
And who they are fighting against.
I don't appreciate people who are hateful and racist, sexist towards anyone.
No more Trump! No more hate!
One day after his inauguration, President Donald Trump was jeered on this side of the border. Canadians making it clear Trump-style policies are not welcome here. And this woman hopes never will be.
We have a very different government, a very different system, but that culture comes over, and I think we're seeing that already with Kelly Leach and with Kevin O'Leary.
But today most people here are looking south to the message and the man.
This has become larger than just an election. This has become an issue about misogyny, about racism, about sexism, about homophobia. And so we are here to gather as a community, women and men, to say no to all of these things and to say yes to what we believe in.
In Canada's cities, they turned out by the thousands, from coast to coast, peacefully protesting in the streets. In Toronto, an estimated 60,000 people closed the downtown to traffic, the largest protest the city has seen in years.
Obviously, the election of Donald Trump has brought us all together, but I think as we've come together, we realize there's a lot of work to do.
Here in Winnipeg, organizers of the march are encouraging people to continue the conversation, and they're hoping many will return for another rally planned for International Women's Day just over a month from now. Sandy.
All right, Jill, thank you for this.